Russia is an unforgiving place. From its harsh environments to its wartime history to housing the most brutal prisons in the world, Russia certainly has a reputation to uphold. Like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for weekly chilling crime content. The country has seen its fair share of atrocities over the years: bombings, war zones, radiation emergencies, serial killers. And to add to this list is one of Russia's lesser known but strangely unique monsters, the Maniac with dull eyes. Sometimes known as the Danilovsky Maniac or the Dull-Eyed Maniac, this mysterious individual was responsible for the murders of at least 7 women between 2004 and 2007. He strangled his victims with makeshift garrotes and skillfully covered his tracks like a master criminal, effectively evading capture despite his high body count. The killer's sadistic activities put the local area in a constant state of fear, to the point that local authorities offered a significant reward for anyone who could help catch the maniac. And what made the Dull-Eyed Maniac's crimes even more bizarre was his unique calling card. On the walls of his crime scenes, the maniac left behind crude, pornographic drawings. The maniac appears. The city of Cherepovets in the Volga Oblast region of northwest Russia is an industrial landscape. The city's defining building, Severstal Cherepovets Steel Plant, is one of the largest iron and steel mills in the whole country. The rest of the city lies in its shadow, as the Cherepovets skyline is regularly interrupted by gigantic bursts of black smoke from the steel mill's chimney. The constant smoke not only pollutes the nearby river, but also dyes the sky a murky gray. On February 4th, 2004, 17-year-old Marina Ostrovskaya left her house in Sovietsky Prospect, intending to meet up with her fiancé's parents. At around 2 p.m., Marina decided to take a shortcut to her destination, which took her through a vacant lot on Danilovsky Street. Marina never arrived. Victims surface. Later that evening, Marina's parents alerted the police of their daughter's disappearance. But after an extensive search of the area, including a thorough examination of the usual route she took, police found no trace of the teenager. She'd simply vanished, during daylight hours no less. The search for Marina lasted a total of 18 months, and during their search, authorities made 3 shocking discoveries. In August 2004, the body of a 19-year-old girl was discovered in an area of abandoned wasteland in Patinsky Cherepovets. The girl was Irina Popova, a student from the local state university. She'd been raped, strangled, and discarded. Her body had not been concealed, simply left out to rot in the elements. The following month, another body was discovered around 2 miles from the first. Police found Tatiana Beva, a 22-year-old student in an isolated zone behind the Cherepovets School of Arts, having also been raped and strangled. Tatiana had been reported missing only a few days before. There were clear connections between the 2 victims. They were both young, female students who'd been attacked and killed in an identical manner. Both were left in open areas within close proximity to each other. Were these similarities purely coincidental? Or had the industrial city of Cherepovets become a serial murderer's hunting grounds? It didn't take long for the truth to surface. When only 3 months after the discovery of Tatiana Beva, another victim was found under nearly identical circumstances in December 2004, and eerily had the same first name as the previous victim. Like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for weekly chilling crime content. Let us know in the comments who'd you like us to cover next. Tatiana Maskimova was a 17-year-old girl who was discovered in a vacant lot outside a military base on Milutina Street and exhibited the same features as the 2 previous bodies: rape, strangulation, and bruising to her torso. But this time, there was a notable difference in the body disposal method. Maskamova's corpse had been covered with sticks, leaves, dirt, and snow. Unlike Marina and Tatiana Beva, the killer did everything to conceal the corpse of this new victim. And in addition to this progression in MO, police found something else besides a body. Around a half a mile from the death site, they discovered a homemade garrote fashioned from thin cable and 2 sticks. When tested for DNA, forensics found traces of the last victim on the rope. The presence of this murder weapon suggested that Tatiana Maskamova was killed on or near the area where she was discovered and wasn't abducted like the previous victims. It made for confusing circumstances for the police, but despite the inconsistency, they operated on the belief that a single perpetrator had been responsible for the 3 recent discoveries and possibly Marina's disappearance too. Sharapovyets had a serial killer, and like so many serial killers before him, the Maniac retreated into the shadows following this short murder spree. His cooling-off period lasted 6 months before he resurfaced to claim another innocent life. On June 26, 2005, the 31-year-old Ludmila Mirshinchenko left her home on Babushkina Street to meet a friend less than a mile away. Their meeting was arranged for 1 p.m., but when the meeting time came and went, Ludmila's friend became concerned. She reported Ludmila's disappearance to the police, and she was immediately assumed to have been taken by what the media were now calling the Danilovsky Maniac. Sighting of the Maniac. Only a month later, in July 2005, 2 unassuming women caught a glimpse of the Danilovsky Maniac in the flesh. But this sighting came at a terrible cost. On July 14, 2005, 19-year-old Svetlana Stepanova, along with her sister and friend, walked toward the beach of the Sheksna River. It was the middle of the day, and Svetlana wasn't alone. But that didn't stop the maniac from pouncing regardless. As the group passed through a barren lot inside the city, Svetlana called out to her companions to continue on while she stopped to fix her shoes. Svetlana's sister and friend kept walking, and less than a minute later, heard a piercing cry. The girls turned around and went back to the area they left Svetlana and found her bag and a bathing costume. The girls frantically scoured the area for any signs of their friend, eventually making a horrific discovery in the nearby bushes. They saw a stranger handling Svetlana's lifeless body. The girls screamed, prompting the killer to run off through the wasteland and out through the courtyard of a nearby correctional school. The maniac disappeared, and so the witnesses were unable to get much of a glimpse of the now infamous perpetrator. Svetlana Stepanova's corpse, throat slit and streaming with fresh blood, collapsed to the ground beside them. Her attacker had torn off her outer clothing, leaving her in just her underwear. The police were shocked to discover the incident and were naturally reluctant to believe the actual events at first. They had the evidence in the form of Svetlana's remains, but it was difficult for them to comprehend how such a level of brutality could be achieved in such a short window of time. According to the eyewitnesses, the perpetrator had abducted Svetlana during a momentary parting from her companions, in which time he dragged her out of sight, undressed her, slashed her throat, and departed before anyone could catch a solid glimpse of him. It was the actions of a phantom with near supernatural levels of barbarism and cunning. These actions also gave no insight into the perpetrator's character. Was it the work of extraordinary planning, or was it an opportunistic execution he carried out on impulse? Was he unable to control his sexual urges and so struck immediately? And once again, it took place in broad daylight. It was another layer of mystery to an already enigmatic figure. But the crime produced new leads. Svetlana's companions had seen the man and were able to give a very brief description to investigators. It also gave the police another area of wasteland to search for potential previous victims, and in doing so, made 3 ghastly discoveries. The maniac's lair. Authorities combed through the wasteland, eventually coming to the abandoned remains of the District Department of Internal Affairs. Demolition had wiped out the above-ground portion of the building, but there was an underground parking lot down below. But this underground chamber was no longer a parking lot. When police broke into the area, they found bizarre pornographic drawings across the walls. The bottom half of the walls were made up of wide cinder blocks, and someone had drawn a different pornographic scene on each block. Several of the blocks featured vanilla sex scenes, while a large block running along the bottom of the wall featured a 6-person orgy. All the characters had been drawn in black chalk and mostly consisted of crude outlines. Initially, police thought these scenes might have been drawn by rebellious youth looking to shock and disgust. However, strange pictures weren't the only thing police found inside the underground chamber. They also found a concrete pit piled high with old car tires. Inside were 2 bodies, including the person's body that had kickstarted their whole investigation. The corpses of Marina Ostrovskaya and Ludmila Miroshnichenko, the 2 abducted girls, lay unceremoniously in a mass grave of tires. Marina Ostrovskaya had been missing for 18 months, and Ludmila Miroshnichenko had been missing for 4 weeks. After a forensic examination of the bodies, authorities concluded that these girls were both victims of the Danilovsky Maniac. They'd both been raped, strangled, and left in this underground lair. His victim count now reached 6, and those tasked with hunting him expected a 7th very soon. The trail goes cold. The Danilovsky Maniac had taken 6 lives over 18 months. For a modern serial killer, it was a staggeringly high victim count, and the rapid kill rate suggested the maniac's next victim wasn't far behind. Despite this, the Cherpovets police regularly boasted that the maniac would soon be caught. Outside authorities in Vologda were called in to assist, who helped draw up a psychological profile of the offender. Investigators believe that the Danilovsky Maniac lived near the wasteland where the first murders were committed, Danilovsky Street. He was a white male between 20 to 40 years old and was experienced and prudent. He acted coldly and rationally in every case, and did everything he could to not leave any trace behind. They believed he might have been in law enforcement. Then, for 2 years, the residents of Cherpovets breathed easily. The maniac went cold, and during this cooling off period, investigators suggested that the maniac purposely refrained from killing as they discover his hideout. But very soon, the maniac began to hunt again. The Dull-Eyed Maniac. After 2 years of hibernation, the Danilovsky Maniac reappeared. On June 11, 2007, 17-year-old schoolgirl Natalia Zakalova walked along a forest belt near the Oktyabrysky Bridge. Her intended destination was the banks of the Sketskina River to meet her parents. 2 minutes from her destination, Natalia called her parents to tell them she'd be there shortly. But 2 minutes passed, and Natalia didn't appear. Her parents became concerned and called Natalia, but her phone didn't even ring. It was completely dead. They hurried to the police station and told them of their missing daughter, and it didn't take long for the horrific truth to surface. Natalia Zakalova had been abducted. Fears of the maniac's revival began to emerge, and on June 19, 2007, police found Natalia's remains in Zashek-Zinsky Park, around 2 miles from the Sketsna riverbank. She'd been raped, strangled, and disposed of in a remote patch inside the park. What police later discovered added further insult to injury. They traced Natalia's last moments and found that she'd been within shouting distance of her parents when the Danilovsky Maniac, fresh from his long hiatus, resumed his murderous reign. The distance between Natalia and her parents when she was abducted was less than 60 feet. But at last, the killer's insistence on stalking his prey in broad daylight came back to haunt him. A number of eyewitnesses caught sight of a strange man in the region where Natalia had been taken, so police were finally able to put identifiable features to the figure terrorizing the city. From multiple eyewitness statements, police concluded that the Danilovsky Maniac was between 30 and 50 years old. He had a dense build, cropped brown hair with bald spots and patches of gray. But the most identifiable feature, according to those who'd seen him, was the blurry or cloudy look in his eyes. Once this piece of information hit the news, tabloid sensationalism morphed the Danilovsky Maniac into The Dull-Eyed Maniac. Investigators drew up a composite sketch of the perpetrator and distributed them around the city. They offered a reward of 1 million rubles, or $13,000, for help catching the maniac. Information from the public came in thick and fast, and there was one apparent sighting of the maniac that demanded the police's attention. A teacher from a local correctional school had recently caught a strange man chalking pornographic drawings on the school's exterior walls. When police investigated, they had no doubt that the man had been the Dull-Eyed Maniac, and it was the same school whose courtyard the killer had escaped through after killing Svetlana Stepanova 2 years before. But as mysteriously as he arrived, the Dull-Eyed Maniac disappeared. After this 7th murder, the maniac simply vanished, never to be heard from again. Authorities waited with bated breath for the next young female corpse to fall into their laps, but the months and years went by, and none came. In December 2022, authorities appealed for public help by releasing 3 new photographs relating to the maniac case. 2 photographs were modern composite sketches, and one was of an unknown person who's suspected of being the maniac himself. How did the Dull-Eyed Maniac manage to evade capture so well? Was he a law enforcement official like so many people believe? Or was he simply an everyman who got lucky? Why did he disappear for 2 years after killing with such regularity? And why did he mysteriously vanish for good in 2007? The case of the maniac with dull eyes continues to be a mystery. He may still be out there now, hiding in the shadows of Sherepovets or any other city in the world. Like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell for weekly chilling crime content. Let us know in the comments who'd you like us to cover next.